All right, everybody, it is time to do another installment of me reacting to your hot takes. I asked on Twitter to share your blazing, flaming hot takes with me so that I can turn them into content. You give me the coal, I press it into diamonds of content. That's the way this works. I'm the head of the content factory. You guys are the worker bees that shovel the coal into the content factory. I refine them, turn into diamonds. We're a great team. That's what I think. I think we make a great team. My man, Sean Kemserov, a very good friend of mine for many, many years. I actually didn't notice that this was him. Awesome guy. He got me a job at Abercrombie & Fitch. I was a graphic designer at Abercrombie & Fitch for several years. And Sean is the one who got me that job. So thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. He said, no metal subgenre has progressed since 2009. I mostly agree with this. I would call it maybe like 2010 or 11 or something like that, because I think the last big development in metal was Gent, specifically Periphery, who came out. I mean, I know that they were a band in 2008 or 9 or something like that, but I think 2010 was like their first album when they sort of started to get more popular and stuff. And I would say, to me, Periphery is like the most important band in Gent because they popularized the sound that everyone copies now and the guitar tone and all that kind of stuff. I know people will say it's Meshuggah. I disagree. I think Periphery is really the template because they have the pop vocals and stuff like that. In any case, yeah, I think Gent is kind of the last thing in metal that was any sort of like a kind of newer thing, and that was back in 2009, 2010. So, you know, we can quibble over the year, but I mostly think that's right. I mean, what new has happened in metal since this came out, right? This could come out right now and it would sound totally current, right? Right? This sounds totally current. Yeah, the Doomsday riff, but I mean, really, that's just a version of Gent, right? So I really think, and I'm not talking about specific artists, I'm talking about sounds. I have no belief in Thal. That's cool, but really, I don't think that's substantially different than like Gent, and I don't think it's like that big of a thing. Yeah, I gotta agree. I think the genre is really sort of stuck in the past. Yeah, Thal is just slow Gent. That's what it is. I feel like someone's gonna rip off Northlane's new sound in like 5 years. It's gonna be the next big thing. Somewhere between that and the things Buster does in Humanity's Last Breath. Listen, Buster is awesome. He's a great guy, super talented, and I love him. But I do agree that Thal is basically just slower Gent. So that's not to take anything away from him or anybody else. But I do kind of agree. I think metal needs something new, and I don't really hear it. And anytime something new does come along, they tend to reject it. So I think that metal is kind of done evolving. I don't think it's ever going to change. I don't think it's ever going to sound different than it does now. This happens to all genres though, right? So every genre other than pop, because pop is not really like a genre. Pop is just like more of like a market segment. Every other genre at some point gets perfected and then it doesn't really progress past that. For example, punk hasn't really changed since the early 90s, right? Like punk has just been frozen in time ever since then. So baddiecore, pop metal, the weekend core pop music with breakdowns is not new. No, it's not, because Issues did that over 10 years ago. Like all the stuff that, you know, the baddiecore bands like Bad Omens and stuff like that, like Issues did this 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. Listen to this song. This is from 2012, I think, or 2013. It's a decade ago. She's a killer. Try to get inside my head. Try to give her one. They were doing this shit a decade ago. People just weren't ready for it because they were too ahead of their time. But yeah, so that's what I think. I think metal is indeed stuck in 2009. No metal subgenres progressed since 2009. I think it's true. Personally, I would like to see a little bit more progression, but I know a lot of metal fans, anytime I criticize metal, they get mad and they're like, metal's fine just the way it is. Don't you try to tell us what to do. We don't need to change. You go, all right, buddy, listen. This is like, you know, if your friend is like 60 pounds overweight and you're like, hey, you said you wanted to lose some weight. Maybe don't eat McDonald's 8 times a week. And like, you can't tell me what to do. It's my body. I can eat whatever I want. And like, all right, listen. You want to eat McDonald's 10 times a week? Go for it, buddy. That's how I feel about metal fans. Can't help people that don't want to be helped. That's the way it works. Help me help you, metal fans. Help me help you. Speaking of which, Byron the Cat says, punk needs to go through a new phase with DJs, soul patches, crappy rapping, and awesome wristbands to reach its true peak. Now that I completely agree with. As I said, speaking of genres that have not changed at all in a very, very long time, in decades, punk, I would say, is like maybe the most just like kind of stuck in the past genre of all. I mean, the template for punk was basically established in the late 70s, right? And punk has really not evolved substantially since then. Probably the last big evolution in punk was in the early 90s with NoFX and all the Fat Records bands that sort of, you know, took that 80s melodic hardcore sound from Bad Religion and stuff and, you know, basically refined it even more. And ever since then, like, there really hasn't been anything new in punk. And I agree. New punk was the term people were using from MGK, Jaden, etc. The whole like MGK and Jaden thing lasted for like a year and a half or something like that. That's about it. It kind of came and went. I feel like it is already kind of over. And I'm saying, look at this, man. Look at this shit right here. All I'm saying, imagine that a band sounds like Rancid or NoFX, but they look like this motherfucker right here, playing his Warwick 5-string bass with his goatee, his ball chain necklace, whatever he's got going on with his hair here. He's got these greasy spikes. This bitch is trying to interrupt band practice. He's like, bitch. Oh, and look at this guy. This guy right here. This guy needs a ride to band practice. And you know why he needs a ride to band practice? Because he just got his 3rd DUI. And he has a suspended license. And if he gets caught driving on a suspended license one more time, then he's going to go to jail for 90 days. If you just give me a ride to practice, man, I'll give you some gas money. You can have some smokes and I'll give you some gas money. This is what I want to see more of right here, buddy. Right here. We've got the goatee. We've got, you guys may not be able to see it here. I'm going to hide myself. He's got his dog chain necklace, the matching chain around his wrist, and he's got this like incredibly curved iron cross hat, and he's got the earring. I'll let you see here. Everything about this says domestic violence. Yeah, 3rd DUI and a minimum of 2 domestics. That's what I'm saying. And listen, if we want to bring punk back, this is it. The dude has never worn a condom in his life. Absolutely not. Does he look like a fucking punk that would wear a condom? Come on. But yeah, I mean, I talk shit about metal a lot, but in all seriousness, I don't even bother talking about punk because it's so irrelevant. Like, what is there to say about punk? It hasn't been relevant since like Green Day. You know what I mean? It's just, punk is so irrelevant. There's literally nothing to talk about. I mean, the honest truth is, like, people are like, oh, why don't you ever talk about punk in your videos? I mean, the honest truth is, like, what would I talk about? Literally nothing happens in punk. The punk of the 80s and 90s is still relevant, which is the sad part, but there is nothing new in punk that matters at all, unfortunately. So there's nothing to talk about. Is there a difference between punk and hardcore? I would say so, yes. Yeah, you might as well talk about disco. Exactly. Like, just the sad fact is that as much as I complain about metal being stuck in the past and whatnot, it's in a way better place than punk is, that's for sure. Punk fashion is the most relevant thing about the culture, and that's because rappers like to dress that way. It's true. It's true. Punk now is just an aesthetic. That's it. Unfortunate, but it's the truth. Here's a hot take. Sean Stoll, MySpace era deathcore was boring and repetitive. Modern deathcore is much more interesting and innovative, especially with bands like Darko and Fit for an Autopsy. A very hot take. Very hot take. Now, let's be real. Let's be real. So I have a big soft spot for MySpace deathcore. Of course, the goats of MySpace deathcore, obviously Suicide Silence. Nobody did it better. Nobody ever will do it better. They're the goats. And what made Suicide Silence and all those MySpace deathcore bands sound so great is how raw they were. This is so raw compared to anything that we would do now. My issue with contemporary deathcore is that it's like very sterile to me, very overproduced. Everything is edited to death. It doesn't feel nasty. You know, you listen to old school MySpace deathcore and that shit sounded unhinged, even if it was like objectively shitty, right? Like, for example, my favorites, Jerome. Like, this to me is a great example of everything that made MySpace deathcore great. Objectively shitty, but amazing. I mean, look at just these dopey little kids. It's amazing. Now, here's the thing. MySpace deathcore did become extremely oversaturated, but that's true of every genre, right? Like, by 2011 or something like that, there was just like a fucking endless amount, maybe not even 2011, like 2009 maybe. There was just an endless amount of just these shitty generic deathcore bands popping up all over the place, everyone copying the big bands like Job for a Cowboy, Whitechapel, Suicide Silence, Winds of Plague, everyone just copying them, right? So it is true that it became an extremely saturated genre full of copycats, but that's really true of any genre, right? I don't know how fair it is to judge a genre like by kind of the middle of the pack, because if you do that, every genre is going to sound bad. I think you need to judge them by the best. And in my opinion, personally, MySpace deathcore had that like rawness and energy that is kind of missing from a lot of the modern stuff. Now, if you're one of these people that like the precision and sort of highly produced, edited perfection of modern deathcore, I understand why you might prefer the newer stuff. I don't. However, you know, when you're talking about the best bands like Darko's fucking awesome. Like, you're not going to get any argument from me on that. I think this band's fucking incredible. Like, easily one of the like most interesting bands out now, and as far as like metal goes, no question about that. This shit's amazing. Darko has that kind of like, I don't know, unhinged quality that a lot of the MySpace deathcore stuff did. But I don't know, in my personal opinion, look, if you like modern deathcore, and I'm not going to throw any particular bands under the bus, if you like this modern deathcore stuff, that's totally cool. Like, I get it. But to me, it's just like, I can't get into it because most of it is so sterile and overproduced. Not a big fan of most modern deathcore production. I think it works well for Lorna Shore because of how atmospheric their music is. Yeah, Tracheotomy's cool. Lorna Shore for sure. Like, I think what they're doing is really cool. But I don't know. I'm not into it. It's just like, it's so overproduced, and it really just kind of gets into a lot of the vocal gymnastics stuff where I feel like they're not really writing songs now. It's just like, who can come up with sort of the most, over-the-top, TikTok-friendly breakdown for shock value. I don't think that that's good music, personally. It's not interesting to me. It's cool the first time you hear it, but then the novelty wears off, and it's just kind of like, yeah, it's really cool and heavy, and you made a bunch of dinosaur sounds, but where's the song? You know, again, I'm not talking about Lorna Shore. I think Lorna Shore is awesome. I'm talking more about all the bands that try to be Lorna Shore is, to me, what's not so great. I disagree with you, Sean. I see where you're coming from, but I don't agree with you on that one, personally. E.L. Chandler has several hot takes. I'm going to focus on the second one here. The vast majority of progressive metal songs are trash and should be about 3 or 4 minutes shorter. I agree with this. Obviously, I'm biased because, you know, I listen to things with more of like a pop ear. Right? This has been my feedback for Sleep Token since the first time I heard them. They have 6 or 7 minute songs that, in my opinion, would be better if they edited them down into like a 3 to 4 minute, more accessible, catchy song. I think that they have like 3 minutes of great material padded out with like another 3 or 4 minutes of what I would consider to be filler. Personally, what the fans of this stuff will tell you is they always get angry when I say that, but they will tell you, well, that's not what they're trying to do. And that's not, and that's true. That's not what they're trying to do. But for me, my interest is like, I always want to see how big can this thing get? To me, the interesting thing is not like anybody can make a song that appeals to like the hardcore niche fans of a thing, right? That's easy. Like, you can make a death metal song that death metal fans like. You can make a pop punk song that pop punk fans like. You can make an emo song that emo fans like. But to me, the real challenge is, can you make something that people outside of that core fan base really like? And I think Sleep Token has done that, to be fair, because I mean, you've seen how they've blown up on TikTok and stuff like that. So I'm not necessarily speaking about them in particular. It's more about kind of 99% of the rest of the genre. To me, that's the challenge. It's like, can you write something that people outside of the scene care about? And I know that they're going to say that they don't want to. I get it. I understand. But I think that's a cop-out. When you're like, oh yeah, well, this stuff isn't popular because people don't get it. We're not trying to be popular. We don't care if people don't get it. Honestly, I think that's a cop-out. I think if you really want to challenge yourself, I'm not saying like, you know, you should change your style, you know, to please the masses. I'm not saying that. I'm saying as an artist, you should set out to achieve the creative challenge of staying true to what you want to do, but also find a way to make that appealing to people outside of your normal fan base, because that's fucking hard as fuck. Like, how many people try to do that and fail? A lot of them. So I think the truth is a lot of people are afraid to fail at that. there, because it's really, really, really hard to do both of those things. So I do agree that with this, like, there are few bands, you know, where, like the band Aviations, for example, I think they have like 6 or 7 minute songs that, in my opinion, are worthy of being 6 or 7 minute songs. But for most of these bands, I don't think it is. So challenge yourself to self-edit. I think that's the hardest thing in almost all creative fields, is actually to be concise. Like in writing, for example, most new writers go on and on and on and on. They'll write 5 pages when it could have been 1 page, right? Editing yourself is one of the hardest things to do in art. It's not even about being marketable. I think that a lot of these people in these progressive bands would actually progress as artists if they would give themselves the challenge of being a little bit more concise. That's what I think. I also want to address his other hot take here. The last real innovative thing in the scene was emo rap. Not really sure where the scene can go from here. I completely agree with this. Whether it's Peep, Juice, X, unfortunately, you know, we lost, you know, the biggest stars, unfortunately, in the genre before it was about to like blow up. Those guys all did big things while they were alive, but I think they were just all on the verge of getting just absolutely massive. Like Peep in particular, I've said this before, but he was just about to be like the next Kurt Cobain. He was just about to just absolutely blow up. And you can see, I mean, he's been dead, unfortunately, for 6 years. And like his influence and his legacy is like still as strong as it was when he only made music for a couple years. I kind of agree with that. Like emo rap and trap metal to me was like the last really cool thing that happened in the scene, which I would say that stuff was over by like 2019, right? It was like 2013 to 2019 was sort of the peak of emo rap and trap metal. And then, you know, by 2020, they all turned into like pop punk artists and stuff. Yeah, once Juice passed, it was done. So I think so. So it's unfortunate that, you know, we'll never know what it could have been. But, you know, that just we lost the biggest, you know, personalities and some of those most brilliant people in the genre. And I do agree that I don't think that there's anything that's come along since then that feels especially innovative or interesting to me. So I'm waiting. You know, I'm not one of these people. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I'm not the old guy that is going to complain about what the new kids are doing and say that, you know, all the new shit is trash. But my personal opinion is that I've been waiting for something new to come along, and I haven't really found it, you know? So hopefully something comes along. I would love to be wrong. I do think, you know, that the baddie core stuff like Sleep Token and Bad Omens and Spirit Box and stuff, there's definitely something there, but that doesn't feel like a really revolutionary thing. Like emo rap was revolutionary. I was like, holy shit. I never thought this could happen. This is a totally unexpected left turn. I don't think that baddie core is on that level personally, but maybe I'll be wrong. We'll see. The last one I have, Ashley Wood says, Ghost is seriously overrated and not metal. Someone's going to come with jabs at me for this, but I'm sure it's just my take. I feel like this is a pretty cold take. I feel like this is kind of the default opinion. It's true. They're not metal. They're not metal, but who cares, right? Who cares? I think I would not choose to listen to Ghost personally, but I think they objectively write good music. I think they're really funny and clever. Have you guys seen their skits? Their skits are hilarious. I had no idea about this. I always thought that they took themselves really seriously, and they don't. I was really surprised. Like, these skits they do are hilarious. He just farted. He had to stop the car to air out the fart. That really, like, legitimately, seeing these skits really changed the way that I saw the band. I was like, oh, okay. I thought these guys were like really pretentious and up their own asses, and they're not at all. They're actually really funny. So I do agree that Ghost isn't metal, but I don't know that they ever said that they were metal. I did have the same reactions. Like, I thought that they were going to sound like Mayhem or something like that based on the way they look and their logo and stuff like that. And then I pressed play on it and I was like, oh, this sounds like Kiss. Definitely wasn't what I expected. So I do agree that they are not metal, but I don't personally think they're overrated. I think Ghost is actually like legitimately really good. I don't know that I would choose to listen to them, but I'm not on board with the Ghost hate train. So I'm sorry, Ashley, but I disagree with you on that one. Well, that does it for this edition of I React to Your Hot Takes. Join me next time for more of your hot takes and my reactions. Does he look like a fucking punk that would wear a condom? Come on.